appointed an Honorary Companion of the Order of Australia, Mr. Hsien Loong, for eminent service to the Australia-Singapore bilateral relationship throughout his 40-year political career, and particularly as Prime Minister of Singapore from 2004 to 2024, Senior Minister Lee has made significant contributions to advancing Australia-Singapore relations. He has been a strong and influential advocate for closer ties between our two countries and has consistently driven agreements and initiatives which encourage stronger and mutually beneficial relationships. During his term as Prime Minister, our economic relationship grew enormously. As a result, Singapore is now Australia's largest trade partner and investor in Southeast Asia. Senior Minister Lee was a key driving force behind multiple revisions of the free trade agreement between our countries to anticipate change through new technologies and supply chain vulnerabilities. He also oversaw development of the 2015 Australia-Singapore Comprehensive Strategic Partnership, which was a breakthrough and a foundation for the next phase of our country's bilateral relationships. Senior Minister Lee actively welcomed and supported defence and security partnerships between our two countries, which have contributed to regional peace and security. He has advocated for Australia's inclusion in key regional forums and has been a consistent and strong supporter of Australian involvement. Senior Minister Lee's eminent service to the Australia-Singapore bilateral relationship is thoroughly worthy of formal national recognition with his appointment as an Honorary Companion in the Order of Australia. Former Prime Minister and now Senior Minister Hsien Loong appointed an Honorary Companion of the Order.
Thank you very much.
Which is a rather splendid document.
Thank you very much.
Which describes exactly what we have invested today. Here we are.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Congratulations. Well, good afternoon, everybody, on this wonderful, wonderful, joyous day. Former Prime Minister and Senior Minister Hsien Loong and Mrs. Hsien Loong, Minister Indranee Rajah, Senior Minister of State Sim Ann, Mr. Alex Yam MP, Mr. Alistair Cox, Australian High Commissioner to Singapore, Mr. Anil Kumar Nair, Singapore's High Commissioner to Australia, distinguished guests of which you are all. It's wonderful to be here with you as my time in Singapore comes to a close. Although I have visited Singapore many, many times over many years, this has been my first visit as Governor-General of Australia, and it has been very special. The theme of all of our engagements has been the coincidence of the 60th anniversary of both Singapore's independence and of our bilateral relationship. It is why today I'm wearing the colours that signify the patterns that were chosen to signify the relationship that sit in the, all of the insignia we're wearing to celebrate 60 years of our relationship. I was very, very honoured to be awarded and to be presented with the Aranda Sam Mostyn Orchid when we arrived, and in return we gifted the President a wonderful Aboriginal painting which was conceived after the artist, a Noongar artist woman from West Australia, spent time in the Botanic Gardens, and she chose as her focus your national orchid and the colour of it to be at the centre of it. So the Vanda Miss Joachim is the colour that was chosen for the palette, and I'm wearing that today just in honour of the bilateral relationship and the way in which we have wanted to celebrate this momentous time with you both. 60 years ago this week, on the 9th of August 1965, Singapore became an independent nation, and Australia recognised that independence the very following day. Senior Minister Lee It was only 2 years later, as a teenager, an exchange student, that you visited Australia in 1967. When you returned in 2016, this time as Prime Minister, you recalled the friendly informality that you encountered 50 years before and which has always been a hallmark of the relationship between our countries. I have to say that I have felt the same warmth and friendship in the days I've spent here in Singapore and have deeply appreciated the candour, optimism, interest, kindness, care and respect that has welcomed me and my team on every occasion. And whilst our informality is often a virtue, today some formality was called for. I am so proud that today, as Australia's Governor-General, I have presided at your investiture as an honorary companion in the Order of Australia, an honour you share with Emeritus Senior Minister Goh Chok Tong, your predecessor as Prime Minister of Singapore. As Australia's highest meritorious honour, reserved for the most eminent service to our country, it is a fitting recognition of the important and enduring contribution that you have made in so many spheres of endeavour to the flourishing and enduring friendship between our two nations, between Australia and Singapore. In honouring you, Senior Minister Lee, we also recognise the intricate and complex fibres of connection and collaboration that have bound our countries together throughout the decades. Later this evening, we will celebrate the Australian High Commission's 60 for 60 project and the very important people-to-people links that have emerged from Australia and Singapore's 60 years of cooperation. In 1983, then as Colonel Lee, and leading the rescue operations for the tragic Sentosa car cable incident, you commanded Australian SAF exchange pilot Jeff Ledger, who kept his helicopter steady for almost 3 hours to support the rescue efforts. Mr. Ledger, who remembers your decisive leadership at that time and with whom you have reunited some years later, is one of the many Australian and Singaporean people who is celebrated in the 60 for 60 project. Under your leadership, Senior Minister Lee, Singapore's economy grew and diversified to arrive at its status of an international finance, logistics and innovation powerhouse. As a builder of relationships in the region, you established Singapore as a leading voice at ASEAN. And with wisdom, consideration and great compassion, you steered Singapore through regional and global financial crises, strategic uncertainty and the COVID pandemic. Australia and Australians have long appreciated your commitment to strengthening our financial and trade bilateral relationship and your support for our participation in regional dialogue. We acknowledge with gratitude your investment in Singapore and Australia's close defence partnership, which is exemplified by the presence of each other's militaries in our respective countries. As you know, emerging from this cooperation was Singapore's participation for the first time in the multinational Operation Talisman Sabre in Northern Australia in July, which I had the great privilege of observing and meeting some of your defence personnel. I was also delighted this morning in my role as Commander-in-Chief to visit Australian service personnel and their families at Sembawang and to present the Australian Operational Service Medal, the AOSM, Indo-Pacific to Petty Officer Daniel Collins. In their commitment to their various roles, our defence personnel are working hard to deepen the relationship between our respective militaries. I also took time in a very solemn and very important ceremony to pay respects at the Kranji War Memorial and then at the Changi Chapel and Museum. It was deeply moving for all of us who were in attendance, and it was wonderful that we had young Australian students from the International School reading poetry, recording lines from history, and then the band playing a wonderful song for us as we stood at the end of that visit to the chapel to think deeply about a relationship that goes back much further than 60 years, but back to 1942. I also had the great opportunity this afternoon to visit your splendid gardens, where I know you visit quite often, and where I was able to see more of these wonderful orchids together with a number of trees in the Australian garden, which made us all feel very proud to have this relationship, which is also bound by our love of nature. Now, as a driving force behind bringing the comprehensive strategic partnership to a conclusion in 2016, you have remained a steadfast advocate for cooperation between Australia and Singapore that embraces economic, strategic, cultural and most particularly people-to-people dimensions. As you said to the Australian Parliament in 2016, our partnership is greater than the sum of its parts. Senior Minister, in this auspicious year, when we celebrate 60 years of Singapore's independence and 60 years of deepening friendship, on behalf of all Australians, I want to thank you for the ambition and determination that you've devoted to the Australia-Singapore relationship. I have to say that on a personal note, I have enjoyed very much your involvement in Australian business, and together you have encouraged many to invest deeply in businesses that have flourished in Australia, which has given many of us in our various roles over many years great heart that we learn from one another in so many different ways. On a lighter note, back to our informality, I guess, I also wanted to share with you that this is also the year that I turned 60. And so I will take the auspiciousness of this occasion and the fact that 60 is important for many reasons to feel much better about reaching that age, and know that I have celebrated at a time of great moment for Singapore, but particularly for you as now an honorary companion in the Order of Australia. Congratulations on behalf of all Australians. You are forever in our hearts. Thank you, and I might call on you now to make a few remarks.
Your Excellency, Governor-General Sam Mostyn, High Commissioner Alastair Cox, High Commissioner Anil, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, thank you all for this tremendous honor. I'm deeply humbled to receive this award, and I do so on behalf of the generations of Singaporeans and Australians who have worked hard to strengthen the partnership between our two nations over the past 6 decades. I would also like to thank the Governor-General for her very warm and generous words, which brought back memories of many fond interactions and exchanges and visits to Australia and with Australians over very many decades. From Singapore's early uncertain days as a fledgling nation, Australia has been a steadfast friend. You were among the first to recognize our independence, and in fact, the first to establish diplomatic relations with us. You extended us security support through the five-power defense arrangements in 1971, at a time when we needed it most, an arrangement that continues to this day. Over the years, the bonds have only deepened. We have refreshed and deepened our bilateral cooperation. On security, Australia has long welcomed the Singapore Armed Forces to train in your country. And this year we are celebrating the 35th anniversary of Exercise Wallaby, the SAF's largest unilateral exercise in the Shoalwater Bay training area. On trade, the Singapore-Australia Free Trade Agreement, SAFTA, signed in 2003, was Australia's first bilateral FTA with an Asian country. In new and emerging domains, we recently signed the Singapore-Australia Digital Economy Agreement and the Green Economy Agreement, paving the way for new fields of cooperation. And now we are exploring how both countries can strengthen our economic resilience in times of crisis. In 2015, we launched the Comprehensive Strategic Partnership, which frames and focuses our efforts to strengthen partnerships across many important sectors. This year we celebrated its 10th anniversary, and I look forward to the next bound of the CSP, which we plan to upgrade when Prime Minister Lawrence Wong visits Australia for our 10th annual leaders meeting later this year. Beyond your bilateral relations with Singapore, Australia has long played an important role in the region. Australia became ASEAN's first dialogue partner in 1974, and Australia and Singapore collaborated closely to launch the ASEAN Regional Forum. At the first annual ASEAN-Australia Summit in 2021, Singapore supported the establishment of a comprehensive strategic partnership between ASEAN and Australia. I made my last visit to Australia as Prime Minister in March 2024, and that was, in fact, for the ASEAN-Australia Special Summit to commemorate the 50th anniversary of dialogue relations between ASEAN and Australia. We've also collaborated to advance regional economic integration. Our efforts began with APEC, in whose formation Australia played a pivotal role, and since then we have launched further significant initiatives such as the CPTPP and the RCEP. How have we been able to achieve so much bilaterally and regionally, despite being two very different countries? In the words of former Prime Minister Malcolm Turnbull, a wide brown land and a little red dot. It is fundamentally about our shared values, our compatible perspectives of the world, and a deep reservoir of trust built up over the years. We both believe in the importance of an open, inclusive, and rules-based multilateral order. Our societies are multicultural, diverse, and pragmatic. Australian leaders from both sides of the political aisle appreciate that Australia's future is deeply intertwined with our regions, while Singapore has consistently sought to be a steadfast partner and pathfinder for Australia's engagement in Southeast Asia. Throughout my years in government, I have been privileged to work with many outstanding Australian leaders and officials. One happy consequence of a long career in politics is that you end up being grateful to many Australian counterparts and friends. There are too many to name and thank individually, but I will long remember their support and friendship, how we handle complex issues together, and the paths we found to take our countries forward. I'm glad the close personal ties between our leaders have continued under Prime Ministers Anthony Albanese and Lawrence Wong. These deep and extensive ties did not come about by chance. They are the fruit of sustained hard work, political will, and mutual trust built through weathering tough times together. I'm privileged to have played a modest part in strengthening this relationship, and I'm confident that Singapore and Australia's friendship will continue to blossom and grow. And may I add that this is not just a friendship between governments and officials, but also between the peoples of our two countries. The Governor-General visited Sembawang this morning and met some servicemen there. Sembawang is one of our group representation constituencies in Singapore. It's divided into, I think, 5 pieces, and the piece which you visited used to be called Canberra because it was the British naval base and there was a gate to the naval base which was called Canberra Gate. But with the increase of the population in Canberra, Canberra had to be split. So it is now 2 divisions instead of 1, one of which needed a new name. And the new name we called Naval Base, and the old name, the other half, is called Canberra. So I asked the MP, I met the MP this afternoon for lunch, it so happens, and I asked him, how do the residents like this? He said, well, the old folks like Naval Base because they remember the times when the British were there. The young people, they like Canberra. They don't remember the history, but Canberra is in Australia and that's a good place. So there's a lot of goodwill, and I think it bodes well for our relationship. 60 years is a significant milestone. In Chinese culture, it is one complete cycle of the Chinese calendar. It is so in relationships between countries, and is also significant in a person's life. So I wish the Governor a very happy 60th birthday to come, and I wish our relations between Singapore and Australia many more happy years and at least one more 60-year cycle of depth and friendship and understanding ahead. So let me express once again on behalf of the people of Singapore my heartfelt gratitude to the government and people of Australia, and particularly to the Governor-General for this distinct honor. Thank you very much.